Hey everyone, and welcome back to Too Ambitious. I'm Trish Lindo. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, if you've never joined this show before, this is a live series that celebrates Black women and women of color, entrepreneurs and founders who are innovators, disruptors, and yes, very, very ambitious. Now, for those of you who have been joining the show, you probably noticed, where is Trish? Well, Trish is in Texas, Austin, that is, for South by Southwest EDU. I'm super excited to be here. I'm here with Ed Choice, ED Choice. It is a nonprofit that empowers families to basically give them the choice to choose the schooling environment that they want for their children. So I've been learning so much since I've been here, all about education and how are we setting our kids up for the next century. So very exciting to be here. If you've never been to South by Southwest EDU or South by Southwest, which starts tomorrow, I highly recommend to go because you learn so much and you connect with so many amazing people, and I'm truly honored that I've been able to do that. So without further ado, while you are here, you wouldn't believe who is here today. Brittany Cole is here today, and I'm super excited to have this conversation with her. Now, you're probably wondering, who's Brittany Cole? Well, I'm going to tell you. She is the founder of Career Thrivers. Her company is a leadership development firm that specializes in tailored and targeted solutions for organizations to cultivate an inclusive culture that leads to results. Now, she's not only extraordinary, she is also absolutely phenomenal. She's a best-selling author. She's a TEDx speaker. She is a LinkedIn top voice. She's a podcaster, and she's also a LinkedIn learning instructor. So yes, we have to show her some love. So let's give it up. Let's bring Miss Brittany Cole onto the stage. I want to see all those emojis light up for Brittany Cole because she is all that. So welcome, Brittany. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Trish. Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm excited to be on the Too Ambitious show with you.
Hey now. So thank you. So I'm so happy that you're here. We've met a couple years ago, and you have been building such a phenomenal business. In just the 2 years that I've known you, you have gone into the stratosphere. So, that is a testament to your hard work and, who you are as a businesswoman. So, let's get into it. You have worked in corporate and pretty successful companies, Fortune 500 companies, and was doing extremely well by most standards, by all standards. So why did you decide to sort of leave it all behind to start Career Thrivers?
Yeah, well, I think one of the hardest things to do when it comes to transition is to leave a good thing. And that's exactly what I had in my almost 12-year career at Pfizer, a really good thing. Worked with some of the most brilliant people in the world, doing really incredible purpose-driven work, breakthroughs that change patients' lives. And it was just the perfect intersection of a kind of a life shaking. Is kind of
Right.
how I think about it. And so I was at a point where there was organizational change going on. And I always do that because corporate language is a thing. And that is usually
Right.
corporate language for layoffs are coming in some way, shape, or form. And so I actually was impacted by that organizational change. My role was eliminated. I was on a
Okay.
layoff list, and I had all of these really great opportunities coming to me. And Trish, it happened at a moment where I thought I was moving in one very clear direction. So I had spent some time as a marketer in New York, and that was the role that was the dream role. So I was in the city doing the thing at the time that I thought I was supposed to be doing it, and had some life disruption connected to that. My mom died, my first best friend, unexpectedly during that 2 year kind of stint of living in New York and being a marketer there. And so when I got the invitation to come and lead a sales team, that the tap on the shoulder, the corporate tap is real.
Right.
The heads up
Love that
about the
tap.
sales, yeah, about opening it back in Nashville, which is my hometown where I'm sitting today. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. This is shorter than the amount of time that I thought we would be in New York. I was looking at another marketing promotion that would have kept us in New York longer. My husband was working in New York as well. But we said, yeah, like we're both Nashville natives. Let's get back home. I want to be able to support my dad without hopping on a plane monthly.
Right.
So I took that opportunity, and I thought it was going to be an 18-month opportunity. It ended up being like a 3-month opportunity. So I'm like, hold
Okay.
on. What's happening? So that really, much like disruption does, right? And I'm getting to the why. I believe that any disruption that leads to, that is a result of loss, disruption that is a result of an unexpected career or job change. The
Yeah.
beauty in those moments, the beauty and the grief that's associated with those moments, is that it helps you to really see what your real priorities are. It helps you to quickly
Absolutely.
differentiate between what are the things that I'm choosing to do and what are the things that people tell me that I should do that I'm
Right.
doing. I got real clear about, like, okay, here's an opportunity for me to make a decision. And I knew I was living and working in this place where I'd started a side hustle, much like 50% of the current workforce. I was doing
Yeah.
something else outside of work, making money. I was speaking, and I was an image consultant turned career coach for women leaders. And so I was getting started, had started to get invitations to do work inside of companies, and I knew it was going to be a conflict of interest. And so through much prayer, many conversations with mentors and an executive coach. And I
Mhm.
share that tidbit often, I don't think, because I think it often slips my mind, but I had an executive coach at Pfizer that was so instrumental in
Oh,
helping me think through what's the best decision for Brittany. And
right.
the best decision at that time was to say yes to a 12-month severance. And I share that because I think so often aspiring, ambitious entrepreneurs sometimes leave the workforce too early, right? I
Uh-huh.
left the workforce with a parachute for about a year to kind of, have a year of salary to figure things out. And so rebranded my image consulting business to Career Thrivers. And
Mhm.
now 98% of our business is B2B, working directly with corporations, helping them create space for talent that looks like you and me. So it has been certainly a full circle moment, but all of those kind of just listening to my instincts, the advice of wise counsel, but also
Mhm.
taking a bet on myself led
Yeah.
to nothing's really wrong here, but I believe I
Yeah.
can do more that could
Yeah.
even impact this place. And so let me go chase that.
Yeah, and I thank you for your transparency in sharing that too, and I know there's so many people who are watching and just so many people that I'm sure who is going through the same thing right now. We know that there's been, so many layoffs, in tech. I've been impacted as well, and yeah, it's a transitional time, but it can be a phenomenal and empowering time as well. And what you've been able to create during that time and realize for yourself, albeit it was difficult, is a testament to sort of your self-awareness as well. So for career thrivers, tell me a little bit about the work that you do through career thrivers. You said you work with organizations. Do you work with individuals as well? Like, how does it all work?
Yeah. So my life's mission, which has taken many forms and I'm sure will continue to evolve, is
Yeah.
all around encouraging and equipping leaders to thrive in spaces where you are
Yes.
seen, you are heard, and you are valued. And
Love
so
it.
today, what that looks like is we have a phenomenal team of coaches, facilitators, and kind of internal operational team that works directly with corporations to help them retain women and professionals of color. And we do
Okay.
that in four ways. So, one, through organizational strategy consulting, which over the last 4.5 years has looked a lot like DEI consulting. Learning and development is the second way. It's the biggest bucket. That's anything from me coming in and doing a one-time keynote to really our sweet spot is developing and designing curriculum and programs and licensing those to companies from a tailored cultural context approach where you're
Mhm.
developing leaders, both people leaders, but also emerging leaders in
Right.
diverse demographics. The third bucket is coaching. So we design programming from the perspective of coaching, but I truly believe in helping organizations cultivate a culture of coaching. I believe it's
Yeah.
the missing link in professional development within
Mhm.
corporations. Usually, coaching is reserved on one of two ends of the spectrum. So you're either an executive level leader, you get access to coaching. I stumbled upon access to coaching at Pfizer. So I had
Right.
access to coaching. Pfizer paid for coaching for me. Or coaching gets a negative connotation because you end up on a PIP, a performance improvement plan, and you need to be coached up. And that's when people shy away from coaching because they think coaching means they're underperforming. Well, most diverse talent is in the middle. and they've never experienced career leadership coaching. So
Yeah.
we provide solutions in that space. And then the fourth bucket is events. So taking all of that and bringing people together in a highly impactful and engaging virtual or in-person learning experience.
Yeah, that all sounds wonderful and definitely something that every company I would think would be, signing up, every chance they get, How have you been able to sort of distinguish yourself from, other organizations or other companies that do similar work to what you're doing? What's your special sauce, Brittany? Tell us.
Yeah. So our special sauce is in the tailored approach. So anyone that's in learning and development or spending a little bit of time researching leadership development programs, they usually get a bad rap. Usually there are headlines around like, how do we assess the ROI of this programming? We spend a lot of dollars here, it's not working. And
Yeah,
usually that's because there's a one size fits all approach that's
right.
taken to developing leaders, or there's no approach at all. That's the status
Yeah.
quo. So what happens
Yeah.
a lot of times in organizations, the best performer is promoted to people leader, and they have not developed their skills to bring the best
Mhm.
out of people. And that's a completely different skill set. So we really look at, if you're looking at, if you have leadership competencies, if you haven't set out leadership competencies, what really makes a great leader of people, right? We design around 4 levels of leadership. So there's leading self, leading people, leading leaders, and then leading the organization. And across those 4 paradigms, how do you then tailor that content and curriculum for the
Right.
talent, right?
Yeah.
The identity of the talent matters, their experience matters, their background matters. And so we're taking those things into consideration when we design curriculum with the organization's business goals in mind, also with the talent that they want to impact, and specifically the talent that they want to retain. So our best performing program, definitely highest rated program, it's a program called Rise and Thrive for emerging women leaders. We
Okay.
run that through a very tailored 3-day intensive that we run
Okay.
out of Nashville, and then there's 6 months of coaching that's connected to that. So again, it's very tailored to say for an emerging woman leader who might be juggling many things in addition to being ambitious and wanting to advance. How do you ensure that she's developing as a leader in a way that connects with who she authentically is?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that rise and thrive. I'm here for it. Yes. How are these organizations receiving the work that you're doing? Have you encountered like any pushback, especially I think when you're dealing with people in the C-suite? How do you navigate that? Because you're coming in and you're disrupting. You're like, hey, things need to change. So how do you handle that?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of my background and the team that I get to work with, how we think about particularly work around inclusion and equity. And you didn't specifically ask that question, but it's very much connected to a lot of times how we've come in to,
Mhm.
working with partners like Amazon and Bridgestone and Caterpillar and Morgan Stanley and UPS. So when you think about that work, oftentimes there are 2 aspects that are missing. One is taking a change management approach to the work, because that's
Right.
really what it is. You're trying to, even if you've already had a position on this space
Yeah.
of DEI, you're usually doing something different over the last 4 years. Organizations have been looking to elevate it or start it, right? So there's a
Mhm.
change management lens that's often left out, and I say that because I think what we're seeing today when it comes to the general backlash around the work, there are a lot of reasons for it, but one of the reasons for it is the fact that many organizations took a tactical approach to the work. So they did
Right.
not take a sustainable, strategic approach to how they implemented and embedded DEI into the fabric of the business, right? They were like, oh,
Mhm.
of course,
Yes.
or let's start this DEI committee. And then, you have employees that are wondering where is that in 2024? What happened
Right.
to it? There wasn't a change management approach. And then secondly, it wasn't approached as a business function. And so
Yeah.
as a former commercial leader, my lens on this work is as a commercial leader. So, and I think that that's important because typically what happens, when it comes to this work is it's either top down or bottom up driven. So it's
Right.
grassroots, and you have ERGs or business resource groups that are very passionate affinity groups about the work. They're pushing the work up. And then, like we saw in 2020 and 2021, you have an executive level, either new strategic priority or push from the top. but change happens in the middle. Culture is cultivated in the middle of the organization with the
Yep.
mid-level managers, with people leaders. And so ensuring that they're connected to the work is really one of the differences that we take. And so where we have seen, pushback here recently, it's really been as a response to this being a political election year. And I think
Right.
one of the topics that we usually lean out of on the face, but not actually, is politics. And I say that because politics drives business. So your executive level leaders aren't leaning out of politics. They are highly engaged into what's happening politically,
Mhm.
and that has a direct impact on the business. But when you think about org culture from a human capital perspective, usually we say things like, "Don't talk about politics in the workplace." Well, the truth of the matter is the only reason why we ever talked about DEI in the workplace since the late 1960s was because of legislation, was because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that introduced this body of work that has taken on and evolved, taken on many different forms. I won't get into the weeds of that. However, though, knowing what we know about the current geopolitical environment to date, many organizations, I just came from a phenomenal conference put on by the Conference Board
Mm.
with global chief executive officers from Fortune 500 companies, everybody from Visa to Chase to, did you know that the House of Representatives has a chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer? So
No,
all
didn't know
C-suite and
that.
executive level leaders. Yeah, and the conversation was around how many organizations are being intentional around language. That's important, right? Because of the backlash, but also very intentional about the fact of the matter that the workforce is only becoming increasingly more diverse. So when you look at US labor statistics, and especially if you've got global statistics around demographics of people, diversity isn't going anywhere. And it never has, it never will. Diversity is just a fact.
Right.
Inclusion is the act, but equity is in the stats. And so trying to impact equitable representation, equitable access to resources, equitable promotions within organizations is the work that leaders like myself and others internally get to do. And that's really at the root of the work that we do at Career Thrivers and that we get to do with our client partners.
Yeah, absolutely. You are just dropping some fire information. So thank you for that. And, don't forget if you have a question for Brittany, please leave it in the chat, like and comment as well. Let's see some love and some applause emojis for Brittany because she is sharing her knowledge and her thought leadership with us. And we know that she is, someone who is doing the work, as they say, and she is in the spaces trying to affect change. And, we know that's not easy. So thank you for everything that you're doing with your company, Brittany, because I know it's not easy, and, especially when we think about a lot of the pushback that has been happening, where do you think that we go from here? As some of us who are still working in corporate, some of us who are out of corporate, what direction do you think that we should go in right now? As we're all kind of sitting on this, you know, what's next type of thing. What do you think?
Yeah, so you asked a question earlier that I don't think I answered about, do we serve individuals? And we do, and we're doing more of it. So one of the ways that we do it is through complementary resources. So anyone that's listening, if you go to let'sthrivetogether.com, that's actually the name of the podcast that I host. We also
Yeah.
have an incredible resource there. I think it's really close to 100 pages, maybe a few pages over. But it is a workbook on helping you to identify and leverage your authentic personal brand. And I mentioned that in relation to this question, Trish, because I think as the individual, right, as someone who is either sitting in an organization right now and thriving, or sitting in an organization right now and barely surviving, or not
Right.
sitting in any organization and trying to figure out what's next for my
Right.
career, I think it's really important that one, you recognize your ownership power to own the experience that you want to have within the
Yep.
workplace. I think one of the things that I see too often, and one of the reasons why we are going to be doing more this year to support individuals in addition to the
Mhm.
corporations that we work with, is people who are in workplaces where you're like almost like waiting for permission. You're waiting for someone to pick you for the leadership opportunity. You're waiting to get that maybe tap on the shoulder for promotion instead of
Yeah.
really owning the career journey that you want. And so in this time, like I believe we are in a space where, especially for women, that if you are sitting in an organization where you aren't seen, you aren't heard, you aren't valued, then I think it is incumbent upon you, not anyone else, to take a hard look at what do I want to see for my career and
Yeah.
to make a decision around, is this the space and place where I can cultivate that? And I think that second question is really important because I think we get purpose wrong in the career space sometimes. I'm not of the belief that your job is your purpose or that your career is your purpose. I believe
Right.
that your existence represents your purpose, your gifts, your strengths, your talents, the brilliance that you bring to every place that you show up. You are an embodiment of purpose. So you bring purpose to wherever you are. And I think that that minor shift in paradigm keeps people from like looking for the perfect opportunity to
Mhm.
leveraging the opportunity that they have. And sometimes it's just a matter of, even if you're in a career environment that isn't ideal,
Yeah.
it helps you to say, hey, what is my purpose here today? Like I've
Yep.
been in roles where it's like, I know I don't want to stay here forever. I know there are more microaggressions here than I should be having to deal with. I also have purpose by which I'm in this particular role at this particular time. Let me extrapolate all the purpose out of it before I move on to the next place, the next space. And I think that mindset shift helps people to make more intentional decisions. One helps you to make a decision, not just to be sitting around and waiting for something to happen, but it makes
Right.
people to make more intentional decision about what's next. From an organizational perspective, I would say what's next is, oftentimes in spaces, particularly with Black professionals, family, friends,
Yeah.
and you may can relate to this. We've had conversations around like, who would you be during the civil rights movement, right?
Yeah.
Or even prior to, right? I know I've said things like, I couldn't live during that time because such, right?
Yeah.
Um, we are living right now. And I think, I often wonder, like, did our ancestors realize that they were living in history when they were living it? I think right now we're living in a very historical moment that if you're just like not paying attention, you'll miss. And I
Yeah.
think how we respond, especially as leaders, how we respond, and let me preface this by saying from a US perspective, how we respond in the US to what is happening today
Yep.
says a lot about our answer to that question, right? If we were able to go back in time. But I think it also says a lot about what our future will look like. And so I
Yeah.
think this sometimes like apathetic approach and, that isn't impacting me over there, so I'm not going to worry about it, is
Yeah.
the right approach to take. And I think that leaders who are intentional about saying, hey, there's a lot going on that I can't control, but here are the
Right.
things that I do have jurisdiction over. Here are the things that I can control. I'm going to be really intentional about speaking up. I'm going to be really intentional about advocacy. I'm going to be really intentional about making sure that even if I am at risk of reputation or at
Mhm.
risk of people thinking something different about who I
Yeah.
am and how I show up, I'm going to stand on my values and really advocate for this space. And so, it brings my mind back to the work of inclusion and equity because no one's doing diversity work. There's no
Right.
such thing. But when I think about that work, it's like now is the time. If there was ever a time to be unapologetically ambitious about what it means to build an inclusive team, an inclusive organization, to cultivate a culture where everyone believes they belong, now is the time.
Yeah.
Now is the time. So that's what I'd
Yeah,
say.
absolutely. I absolutely agree, and I think when you're in, like, a corporate space, one of the things, that you touched on, is that you do have to be an advocate for yourself. You can't go in thinking that, like you said, you're gonna get the tap on the shoulder, like, "It's your turn,"
Mhm.
like, especially if you're, like, a person of color, a Black person, like, yeah, that's like pie in the sky, unicorns running around. Like, yeah, no, it's not happening. So you have to, learn how to advocate for yourself, and really sort of understand your why, as you move to that next phase in your career and whatever it is, because not everybody wants to be in corporate forever. They might want to be an entrepreneur like you. So it's really sort of understanding that. Now, you have put together, you've got a LinkedIn Learning course as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your LinkedIn Learning class as well?
Yeah, so it's called Thriving Through Career Challenges.
Love
And
that.
I can't, Trish, and I don't mean to embarrass you, but I can't talk about the course without mentioning you. And I think it's so timely. I was giving my last response around like, who would you be? I think when I think about people who have help to advocate for me to have the experience with career drivers that I'm having, to get to work with the client partners I get to work with. Like LinkedIn is a client partner. LinkedIn paid me to develop and design a course for career professionals who are facing difficulty in their career. And I have you to thank for that. Like I said, hey, Trish, this is something that's on my vision board. This is something that I would love to do. And you went back and advocated on my behalf. And I think, and I know I've told you this privately, but publicly, I'd just love to share. Like, I appreciate the intention by which you advocated for not just for me, but other women, other professionals of color, other creators of color, to ensure that we had a voice in a space on the LinkedIn platform. I know that that's your former employer, but your legacy and impact continues to live on in the work that we get to do. And you are an example of what that looks like. When people think like, what can I do? I'm not in the C-suite. You don't have to be in the C-suite. What are you doing with the sphere of influence that you have? And you have been, I know that you are continuing to be, obviously, with this platform,
Yeah.
extremely intentional with how you lead. And leadership is all about serving people. So I have to tell you, thank you for that. Thank you for connecting me with the LinkedIn Learning team.
Yeah.
And so I got on that call, and I never forget. I'm not in my home office right now, but I was in my home office. I have a bookshelf
Yeah.
in my office, and my book is right behind me. And so, I think this happens to all of us, right? It's like you, especially if you're like me, you grew up in corporate and you understand the unwritten rules of how that space sometimes works, regardless of the company or industry. And so I'm sitting on the call, and we're having the conversation about the topics that my course might be about. So I'm giving them all the corporate topics. I'm like, listen, this corporate topic, insert,
Yeah. Yeah.
leadership and leading
Right.
without personal power and confident communication, all of these things that are relevant, they're important, that we have curriculum around,
Yeah.
like a teacher course one in a second, like it's all good. And then she asked me, the content manager, she's like, oh, I see you published a book. Tell me about your book. And so I started to share about the book. My book is around redefining resilience and acknowledging grief in your life and how it shows up beyond the death of the
Yes.
life, the death of a loved one, but also these 5 types of career grief. And so I'm telling her about the book, and I'm watching her face, and she's like, "Oh, we want that. We want to do a course on that." And I was
Yeah.
so like taken aback, like, "Oh, okay," And it's just and I share that because I think sometimes people see your success or they see the work that you do, and they don't think that you have those same thoughts of like, "Is this enough? Is this it? Is this right?" I have those thoughts
Right.
all the time, right? I just keep going. I
Yeah.
just keep moving. Like that sometimes is the only difference. But yeah, I shared, and so the course is about how do you face not just with this like feeling of like, oh my gosh, I hate that this is happening and shrinking, but how do you really thrive through hard moments in your career when you don't get the job,
Yeah.
when you're on the layoff list, when you have a manager that's mediocre, when you are facing adversity when it comes to performance or not showing up the way that you want. How do you move through those moments and really own your story
Yeah.
as you're navigating through? So thriving through career challenges, that is what it's about.
Yeah, and I love that. And, thank you for your kind words as well. I'm always happy to support you and other Black women and women of color founders. That's what lights me up, and, listen, I wouldn't have said or, done anything if I didn't think that you more than deserve to be in that room to create that class. Like, absolutely 1000%, so I'm glad that it happened. You ran with it, and now it's out there, and other people can experience this and learn from all the work that you have been doing. Because I think we've all experienced some sort of trauma, personally or professionally, and yeah, there aren't a lot of tools out there to figure out how to navigate that and still, I like to say, and still remain sane. So thank you for that. What would be your number one advice to somebody who might be experiencing that some sort of trauma right now? They're working, they maybe their parents, they still have to keep going, but they're experiencing some trauma. What is your number one advice for how they can get through this difficult time?
Yeah, well, I think you said it in the language of through. I think so often it's corporate professionals, and that's just my former background and paradigm. But especially when you layer on different identities, so as a woman, especially as a woman of color, as Black women, oftentimes we are conditioned, not just taught, but conditioned to mask. We are
Yes.
conditioned that you know in order to be twice as or you have to be twice as good to get half as much, which I think is a
Yep.
mindset shift that can be necessary, but also damaging to your emotional and mental well-being.
Yeah.
And so, because of all of that, we don't often, I didn't, let me speak about myself personally. I was not making space for the deep grief that I was experiencing, not only
Mhm.
connected to the death of my mother. I think that's what
Mhm.
kind of brought it all to a head for me.
Mhm.
But there were also other moments of career grief in my
Right.
corporate experience that I just bottled up, that I just pressed down. And I'm like, listen, we don't have time for it. We got to show up at this meeting. Like, you got
Mhm.
to know all the things, right? Like all of this conditioning that happens in these settings. And what I learned, two things I would say that I learned. One is that your grief isn't going anywhere. Tyler Perry did a show with Oprah, and he had this line. He said, "Your grief will wait for you," and it's
Mm.
so true. You can try to outwork it, you can try
Yep.
to outrun it, you can try to hide it and mask it and put a rug over it. It's not
Yes.
going anywhere. Like it will wait for you, and it will pop up at moments that are not ideal if you
Yeah.
don't allow the space to what I call in the book reveal and deal so that you can actually heal. Is
Yeah.
so important. And so that's the one thing that I would say. Then the second very connected thing to that I would leave you with when it comes to this topic of grief is that when you show up to work every day, all of your experience, whether you're showing it or not, all of what you are going through, are facing, comes with you. And so it's important that we recognize that in our mind we might think that we're living a professional life and a personal life, or here's
Yep.
personal Brittany, after
Right.
work, and Pfizer Brittany, in the office. But what I learned when I went back to my marketing role after my mom died was that that wasn't real.
Yeah.
That walking through the halls of, at that point, 235 East 42nd Street, they've since moved, um, was the grief that I was experiencing, the guilt that I felt, because as my mother was dying, I was at work. And so I had a lot of
Mhm.
um, guilt, even about coming back into the space that I
Yeah.
had to make space to work through, so
Right.
that, and that I had to make space to communicate about, like to share with other people so they could support me. And I think that's more of what I think we miss in the masking, is that people want to support you.
They
Like
do.
I had some of the best team members, not just brilliant people who knew marketing backwards and forwards, but like the leader that booked my flight. I still don't know who covered that flight. I booked the same day flight for She booked the same day flight for me and my husband from New York back to Nashville on Monday, June the 5th, 2017. And I didn't pull out a credit card. I don't know if she paid for it, the company paid for it, couldn't tell you. But people want to show up and support you, but you have to
Mhm.
create the space to allow them to do that. And if you're masking and pretending that everything's fine, you'll never experience the blessing in service and kindness that
Yep.
matches what you might be used to giving out. And so I would say just lean into those moments. It may be difficult, maybe hard, especially if you're used to, like, listen, I was the bob wearing, you
Yeah.
know answer two answers for every question, I's dotted, T's crossed
Right.
performer in corporate. And
Yeah.
I had to learn, yeah, that Brittany is present, but also the hurting Brittany is present. Also, the
Yeah.
suffering and silence Brittany that's present. The grieving Brittany is also present. And this is actually a space where I can bring that and share that with my team so that they can support me in the work that we're doing.
And I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that and sharing your wisdom, And my final question to you is, how are you doing, Brittany? How are you doing? How have you been thriving since the loss of your mom? Because I know that is a great loss. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you for that question, especially the today. And I'm super intentional to ask that question in that way because it changes. Grief is one of the most unexpected, unpredictable,
Yeah.
complex emotions that we experience. I believe it never leaves you.
Mm,
So today I am feeling grateful, grateful to have this space, grateful to have done the work and continuing to do the work where I don't know who's on listening to this, but whoever's listening to this is my truth and I'm okay sharing it. And
yeah.
I don't feel like I have to make it sound any kind of way. Like
Yeah.
I have just been so blown away by how many organizations have invited me to speak, paid my
Yeah.
speaker fee to come speak on grief. Like it was like I wrestled with God on writing this book. I was writing a completely different book. I was writing the book on, how do you thrive in the workplace as a Black woman? That's the outline I had at the moment. It was more than one. When it became
Yeah.
very clear, like, no, you need to write a book on this topic. Like, this is what you're
Right.
meant to put into the world first, anyway. And just to see the response, to have a LinkedIn reach out and say, hey, we don't want those professional topics. We want this topic on grief. Like, I just feel so grateful to be able to bring that level of authenticity, truth, well-being. Like, I believe
Mhm.
as leaders, we are meant to live and lead well, not just
Yes.
great performers, but to be well in the work that we get to do. And
Yeah.
so I just feel really grateful for the opportunity, to do that. And I lean on my mother's wisdom every single day. I miss her every day, but I'm
Yeah.
also so grateful for so many incredible experiences that we had together and memories that we got to make together relatively, early in my career that I hold on to. But I also still grieve moments that I don't have yet, that I won't have. I'm not a mother yet. I aspire to be a
Yeah.
mother. I sometimes grieve the thought of like, I would love that moment of like, I can't wait to have a daughter, and I would
Yeah.
love to, have that mother, daughter, granddaughter photo moment, outings, that I
Mm.
won't be in that form. Right. So, those experiences come to mind. But today I'm just grateful. So thank you for inviting me. Thank you for this
Yeah.
conversation and creating the space.
Absolutely. And your mom will be very, very proud. I am sure of it, because you are truly phenomenal and so fearless and also what I love about you is that you are just always so open to giving and sharing. So thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure we will see each other again soon. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Um, Follow Brittany on LinkedIn. Check out her LinkedIn learning course. Also, she has a book as well. Name of your book, Brittany? Just give it a
It's
last
called
shout.
Thrive Through It.
Thrive through it. Yes. So you have a million ways you can connect with Brittany and learn more about how to be great as well and how to take care of yourself. So thank you once again, Brittany. And for everyone out there, I will see you next time, next week, for another amazing episode of Too Ambitious. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, everyone.
Bye.